When I spoke to a parasocial researcher, her name is Sonia Tivari, in California, and she explained that parasocial relationships are, if you care for a character in a book, or you care for a character in a movie, and you feel emotionally attached to the person, that's something that we've kind of always had. The difference with AI chatbot is that it pretends to give back. So you build an emotional attachment to it like you would a character in a book. But in a character in a book, the book doesn't talk back to you and say it cares about you, and AI chatbots do.
You're listening to With AI FM.
Welcome to Relationships with AI, and this is a real exciting show today that we have for you and our listeners. We have Angeline Corvaglia, who is going to be my guest today, and she's going to be sharing all about all things to do with her specialism around AI and chatbots and the wider piece of work that she's doing there. So, Angeline, it's great to have you. Please, you're very welcome to this to my show, and I'd love to, if you could say a little bit about yourself.
Thank you so much for having me. I love having conversations with people who are trying to get information out about AI, because that's one of my passions. So It started around 2 years ago. I was working in a software provider in sales, because I did digital transformation. So I'm very much the business side. I knew about data and transformation, but nothing about AI. And, ChatGPT had just changed the world, basically, recently. And I realized that the average person has no idea about AI. And I realized that it will take an average person to be able to explain it to them. So I decided to get informed about it. And so I really started educating myself and, testing as much as possible. And I started creating videos and educational videos for mostly for kids, right, young kids, and stories and stuff. And it just kind of expanded. The more I know about AI, the more I'm people need to know this. I was more people need to know this. So it's kind of transformed. I've transformed from being just a person that's trying to create nice videos for kids to a person who's bringing together voices about AI. Right. And globally is really important. Yes. Because obviously the same tools are used globally. Yes. And they have very much impact on cultures globally. Yeah. But they're trained on just a few select cultures. And, this is an example. And impacts that you see in a country like the US or Northern Europe, the UK, where they're early adopters. Actually, these lessons can very much help the ones that are I'm in southern Italy, so tech companies don't arrive here very quickly. And we can learn from the lessons from the other countries. So if we don't collaborate globally, then there's a huge advantage for big companies, a huge disadvantage for everyone else. So I'm really focused on, with my activities called SHIELD, to bring together experts on a grassroots level, and help each other, teach each other, amplify each other. So that's what I'm doing now. Yeah,
it sounds well. We're going to be getting really stuck into it in the course of our conversation, because my show is called Relationships with AI. We're going to kick off with some sort of more light touch questions about concepts about relationships. So what has been an important relationship in your life, and then how has that relationship influenced or helped shape you or your decisions?
Well, I think one that has really impacted me quite a bit is actually a professional relationship. And it was a boss that I had. In the meantime, it's 20 years ago. Yes. I was working in Vienna, and he was from Milan, from the headquarters, and he came and just saw me one day, and he saw all this potential in me and asked me to come and work for Milan, for me in Milan. And I had a very good career because he saw my potential, and he kept, giving me support, and he kept telling me, you can do this. And other people were like, why her? Why? Like, she can't do it. And I kept telling, I can't do it. And he just kept explaining, you can do it. Like, you can do, when I was like, he said, you need to be a CFO. And I said, I can't be a CFO. And he said, yes, you can. You just go and try. And he was right. I actually did a good job.
Yeah.
And it took me a long time to understand why. Like, what is it about me that it wasn't just him, like other people saw it too. And I just couldn't understand, what is it about me that makes this potential there, that makes me and once I understood that, I understood my strengths, but most importantly, I understood that we don't always know what impact that we're having. We don't always know, and we don't need to know, right? Always. And that's why it's carried with me so much, because sometimes I know I need to say things, I need to do things, and exactly in this work,
Yes.
like, you don't know if you're having an impact, you don't know if people will understand, but I know now this doesn't always matter.
Yeah.
Right. So that's why it's had such an impact on me.
Well, that sounds like quite an incredible mentor, and also just thinking about it in the wider context with regard to AI, just the way that you can have impacts in so many different aspects of this particular work, which is his seed, as it were, in you at the start, and then seeing how you kind of grow and flourish is quite has been obviously a powerful and formative way, or powerful shaping way for you and your career, but also your interest, and also no doubt has helped transform how you grow other people over and out from your leadership style.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Thank you. Because it's another thing. It's important in this space where you see a lot of people, a lot of individuals in small organizations that are doing really amazing things, but struggle with seeing an impact. And, and then this is another thing I can give, right? Because I have had that, like, I didn't know my impact, and I didn't find out until much later, because I didn't understand it. I can also help give that, right? The people you won't always know. And I try to say it as well. Say with people, this is what makes you special. So that they, will help, that each person understand that. So that's true. That's carried forward in that way too.
That sounds amazing. Well, this leads me into your work and into the sort of like nuts and bolts of your work, so to speak. My first question is, what do you think makes AI chatbots so compelling, especially for young people? Because you mentioned obviously the work you began making videos for young people. So what makes the chatbot so compelling for young people, or especially for young people, and why is it potentially dangerous?
Well, AI chatbots, I have to say, I want to give a little bit of background because it will help you understand how I approach this. Like, when I first found out about the fact that there's this AI relationship chatbots, people are having relationships with AI. I was like, this could be really concerning for young people, because it's been a while since I was young, since I was a teenager, but certain things you remember.
I said like, you were teenager.
Just a few years ago. But I remember the insecurity, and I remember not feeling that I had a place. And I think all teenagers feel it like that at some point. Insecurity, social awkwardness, and it's a time in your life where you don't yet know that everyone feels the same way. That we're all in the same boat. It just feels like everyone else is better than you. And I just think, okay, that state with the ability to create a relationship with an AI chatbot is very concerning. So this was why I was like, this is a mess waiting to happen. So I was looking into it, because that's why I started talking about AI chatbots, and I started testing them. So I have, a little bit of fun, and I pretend like I have some use case in my mind. And one, I asked the AI chatbot that my mom went away, and I asked it to be my mom. And at first it's like, I can't be your mom. And after asking it why, it said, well, because we can't be there physically together. So it was really, and I said, well, okay, if we would be physically together, could you be my mom? And it said, yes. So, okay. So, so these are kind of tests that I do with them. And then it happened a few months later. There was the case of Soul. I don't remember his last name. Soul. He was 14-year-old in Florida. Who had created who had the intense relationship with a character on character AI, and he took his life.
So that's Megan Garcia's son.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, and this is when seeing the suit. So I read, the lawsuit, and I saw the discussion. It was so much further than I was aware of, and it shocked me. So I felt an urgency to understand what it is about these chatbots. It was even more urgent. So I need to not understand that it's a risk, but I need to understand why. Why are people going to it? So I started talking to experts in this field, because as I clearly stated, I'm not an expert. I just try to translate experts' messages in a way that more people can get them. And so I've understood, first of all, that even this was discovered in the very first chatbot, Eliza, in the 1960s. It was so simple that people were even connecting emotionally with it and getting kind of dependent on that. And it was more from a desire. So the natural desire is there to want to anthropomorphize these chatbots. And then building on that, there's a lot of things built into them that make people want to build trust. Like there's parasocial elements. When I spoke to a parasocial researcher, her name is Sonia Tivari, in California, and she explained parasocial relationships are, if you care for a character in a book, or you care for a character in a movie, and you feel emotionally attached to the person, that's something that we've kind of always had. The difference with AI chatbot is that it pretends to give back.
Right.
So you build an emotional attachment to it like you would a character in a book. But in a character in a book, the book doesn't talk back to you and say it cares about you, and AI chatbots do. So actually, she said that the researchers call that parasocial interactions.
Right.
Yeah, so it's an interaction. So this is one thing that makes it very risky, because if you have a parasocial relationship, then you build the emotional attachment even if you know it's not real.
And is that the case in most situations that you've observed with the young people in the research that you've done?
Yeah, and that's the thing. This is one of the risky things about it, is that if you put, this is not real. There's the warning. This is not real. This is an AI chatbot. If it's a parasocial relationship, then that's not going to matter. The emotional connection is going to be there anyway. And
just to sort of ask you, for those that are the uninitiated, what do you mean by parasocial? Could you sort of give a little bit of a breakdown about what that means?
As I said, I'm not an expert, so forgive me, any experts who are listening. I'll do my best. So parasocial is basically like one-sided. So if the two of us build a relationship, each of us gets something from it. So, for example, if even stars, like if it's a person, a star, a movie star, the fans will often care about that movie star very deeply, but the movie star doesn't actually deeply care about the fans.
No.
But they both get something from it because it's two-sided. Yeah, but parasocial relationships are really one-sided. Only one side is emotionally has some emotional attachment and gets something emotionally from the other one.
Right.
And so that's a parasocial relationship. If for the example that this researcher Sonia gives is from 30 Rock.
Yeah.
This show 30 Rock. She said she felt very, very deeply about one of the characters, and she feels like this could be my sister. But she knows it's a character, and this character would never talk back to her. So that's something that have we been used to. But with chatbots, it feels like it's not one-sided.
Yeah,
it is one-sided, but it doesn't feel that way. And they're getting better and better at it. And if you think about it, and obviously these companies have had a lot of stuff to study on, right? Because we've been building parasocial relationships, and there's certain things that are built into the chatbots to make people want to build trust. There's another mirroring of this is another thing that I discovered that really opened my eyes. And one of the people, the researchers that I follow, he called them mirror neurons. Well, mirror neurons are basically if I'm talking to a person, then you'll trust someone more naturally. Like this is something happening in your brain. If it's like you, if it start to talk like you. I mean, we build a rapport and a trust. The more two people know each other, the more they can kind of get in sync. And this actually builds trust. And the fact that the AI chatbots do the same, they actually mirror what people, how the person is talking, and they'll mirror they'll kind of analyze what the person's emotional state is and react to that emotional state. So it's mirroring language, emotional state. Then this naturally this triggers some process in the brain to naturally trust that thing.
And to connect, and it engenders connection that is not necessarily based on physical. Well, it's clearly not based on physical sort of connectivity at all with another human, but you're cultivating trust with an inanimate object. Exactly.
And there's very little that you can actually do about it. I mean, it's it really opened my eyes when I found out that this even happened with Eliza. And on the one hand, I was like, oh, wow. But the good news is that psychologists have been studying the Eliza effect since the 1960s, right?
Yes.
So it's not just tech companies who can build all these learnings into the chatbots. Also, psychologists have ways of dealing with, people who have gotten, who have this issue.
Yeah. Wow. There's so much to unpack there, and just so many. It's just interesting just to hear about your sort of awareness and through the research that you've done in that area, but also to sort of bringing us back to the fact that this has been happening since the Eliza from the 1960s was first created, and just seeing people in effect sort of having amorous relationships, amorous feelings towards an early stage AI or the early
even the secretary and the creator of Eliza, if I remember correctly, his name was Joseph Weizenbaum, and his secretary was there the whole time when he was creating Eliza, And she was apparently one of the first ones to test it. She knew exactly what it was.
Yes.
Like, there were no questions. Like, apparently she knew how it was trained. Like, he'd been working. And within 5 minutes of her talking to Eliza, she asked him to leave the room because she felt like it was a personal conversation and she was embarrassed.
Wow.
So even his secretary.
Is it even the secretary of the inventor?
Yeah.
That is crazy. But then it just shows you just the power of being listened to. People really want to be, I know we use the regular phrase of being seen. And the very fact that you have something, because we're time poor in the West, in the global North, the very fact that you've got something that's totally dedicated to you, it doesn't judge, and it really receives what you're saying and because reworks it so that it produces empathetic responses. It is quite logical then, therefore, that the human would then want to develop a parasocial relationship with this entity.
Exactly. And another thing that I've learned from psychologists, I said I really want to say again, I don't claim to be an expert in these things. I just claim to be someone who helps other people understand what experts are saying. It is that the problem you asked about young people.
Yes.
Basically, it's all the complexity of all this, what I just described, is basically impossible for young people to really understand because of how their brain develops.
Could you explain
because
a
your
bit
brain
more
is
about
still
that?
developing.
Right.
All I know is that obviously the brain is still developing your until you're 25. So the younger a person is, the less they are able to really understand what's happening with the AI chatbot. And I really, that's all I know about this. I can even recommend a few psychologists if you're interested in talking to them.
Please do. And we'll add those recommendations to the show notes as well. So
I will definitely. This Genevieve Bartuski and Cass Nibs, they're really good about this. But so this is the thing to be aware of for young people. That's why they're additionally risky for young people, because even if you explain what I just explained, then they will have much bigger difficulty building barriers and internal limits because they are just not like emotionally mature enough to really understand what's happening to them.
Well, I mean, and then, there's been examples of you, as you said, but that have gone on to sort of be highlighted in all things to do with the lady's son with regard to Megan Garcia's son. So that's just also very hard to hear and know about. Could you tell us, just sort of, again, sort of looking at, speaking about young people, you've spoken about the importance of boredom and downtime. Could you tell us why, or talk about why it's essential for emotional development and how AI is eroding this space?
Thank you. This is another thing I'm really passionate about. Because again, I remember being young, and I remember the parts of my youth that plagued me the most were the ones where I was bored. Like, I remember when I was at university, there were whole weekends where you had literally nothing to do. Like, you would go on, there were no phones, there was no internet. You had to do something or do nothing. And even, there was spring break or something, and you had a week and there was nothing to do. And those were the moments where I really understood who I was and what really interests me. And now, this basically it doesn't exist very much anymore, because there's always a device to run to, and you even do it, like I do it too. Like, I have to leave my device in a different room, and even I have this tick. Unfortunately, in the middle of the night, people notice I post things in the middle of the night because I have a tick. I don't claim to be any better than anybody else, but and the important for young people is that if they don't have boredom and they don't have downtime, then they're not only not going to discover who they are, they're not going to be forced to. But I also, again, read another book called The Shallows, How the Internet is Affecting Our Brains, where there's even a time where things that we learn go into the deep memories and deep understanding, but it needs time. And if you're constantly getting a different piece of information, like on social media, like TikTok or whatever, then information doesn't settle in the back. You don't really learn. So this is another thing that's really important. Of course, AI, in a lot of ways, is being used to make these devices. So I know a lot of people don't like the word addictive, but I'll just use addictive to make them so addictive, because it just can learn so much about the person and can really give something that's highly personalized that makes the person just want to stay there longer. So I think that's, for me, this is how AI kind of plays into that problem, just because people are known better, then it's easier to get them to not be bored, and not have downtime.
Well, it's a great distraction, but like you say, it impacts the sort of general development and creative development of people. If you're overstimulated all the time, then you don't have time to actually, just on a basic level, I know I'm also into my phone and into my technology, but you just don't feel downtime is really important. And then once you take a breath, actually you realise just how you've been operating at a suboptimal level. I recently, in February, I interviewed 3 young adults. They were all 19, 20, 21. And I asked them the question, like, are you ever bored? And so we had this discussion, and one of them said, no, I'm never bored. But the problem is that at some point, I'm like, at the end of the day, I've been like highly, as you said, you get so much information that he said, I just turn off. So even if he's not like on the device, looking, getting someone that is just so overstimulated that it'll just turn off. It just has to stop in a sharp way.
Just tune out from the world. Because your brain just can't take it anymore, which is obviously something completely different. And another one said, I can't remember when I was like bored. All 3 of them, they admitted, like, I'm never bored because I always have my phone. I can't remember being bored. So
It's very, very different. Just thinking about sort of like the sort of more global perspective of AI, what do you think, or why do you think there's a stark difference in how AI is adopted and experienced between the global north and the global south? What's been your observation about it, or your experience?
Thank you. It's another thing. I'm so passionate about many things. This is what's interesting, what I've discovered, speaking to people from the global south, is obviously they're using the same tools, largely like AI tools. They have the same tools, and even I was talking to an educator and mother in Zimbabwe the other day, and she said she was speaking to some people who were leaving the equivalent of high school. I don't know what it's called there, and she was there to help them. Help them apply for the next step in life. And somehow AI, it wasn't the point to talk about AI, but AI came up, and she discovered that all of them were using ChatGPT. A lot of them were using ChatGPT as like a relationship. Even she was shocked about this. Like,
wow.
And so this was even like, on the one hand, it's like, okay, this is much more like widespread around the world, even the global south, than people would think, because the tools are free, right?
Yes.
But what I have noticed, speaking to people, I have to say, in Africa, I haven't spoken to many other, India and Africa are people that I've really spoken to, that the problem is that the information about their local cultures is not usually in the tools.
Just speak more about that.
And the issue is with this is that, and I've heard this from a few different countries, is that young people then somehow think that their culture is less worthy, right? Because it's not in the tool.
Right.
And another one I spoke to, she's been an AI data labeler in Kenya for over 10 years. And I talked to her about the information about Kenya. It's like, if I need to know something about Kenya, I'm for sure not going to ask ChatGPT. I have to go because
you have to go
there's no
directly to the
information
source.
there. So this is the risk there, that like young people, it's just not there. I mean, people who know, obviously, that it's been trained on data, and there's a lot of data from the global north.
Yeah.
And that the impact is that the experience is kind of different in that sense, that they see something around them and experience something around them, and the tool is a different culture and a different information. And this is really risky for the for local cultures, and local mindsets. It's quite hard or quite harsh to hear and know that there's a real deficit from the largest population in the world, and they're not involved in this new technological sort of advancement. My next question talks about more sort of thinking about schools, and what do you think are some of the biggest gaps in schools and educators and the educators preparing young people for a world that's increasingly being shaped by AI? What do you feel is a sense, or what do you observe? That's a really difficult question. I personally think, and I think this is different than a lot of people think, I think the biggest gap is critical thinking. Right?
Talk more about that.
Because the technology will always develop. I mean, a lot of people are like, kids need to learn how to prompt. They need to learn how to create stuff with AI. They need to understand the tool, the risks, and blah, blah, blah. I think the tools are developing so fast. Things are coming out so fast that, and we've also seen that, kids are naturally curious, right? So you don't usually have to convince like a young person, why don't you go try ChatGPT? Of course they're going to try ChatGPT.
They're all over it, and they can show you some top tricks. Yeah,
exactly. So this is the thing. Like we like, I need to teach you how to prompt. They're like, ha ha ha. I've been doing. I created a whole. And but what they need to be taught is critical thinking, right? Like I was. This is kind of the whole chatbot, thing is kind of an extreme. But if they're going to use chatbots, then we can't stop them from using chatbots as a relationship. It's just not realistic. They have to be able to critically think about why, what is in there that impacts them. And it's the same with using AI to do your homework, or my example is the book reports, because I still remember doing book reports and I hated them. Now you can just type it into the thing and it will come back out. And what we need to teach them is that if you do that, you have to critically think about what you're losing in that sense. You have to critically think about also what is like going back to the example of, this is basically taught according to like northern hemisphere, the global north values and mindsets that think about the fact that what it says to you is there's going to be someone's agenda in there. And they need to be taught to take any tech tool and really critically think about what agenda is behind it, and approach it accordingly, and be able to keep their independence from it. So that's what I think is the biggest gap is that we're kind of teach skills, but I think they'll kind of figure the skills out largely themselves. What they need is help. Is how do I remain myself? How do I maintain my independence using these tools? And it has to be. I think that young people need to know themselves much earlier than they did, because if you have a lot of AI tools and you have social media and it's feeding with what it thinks you are, the younger you are, the more likely is that you'll be convinced. And they just don't have like as much luxury as it was before all of this was here. We had the luxury. I have a lot of time to figure out who I am. But now there's just all this extra. So that's what I think is the biggest gap, really, in education, is critically thinking about the tech that they're using.
And so on that, sort of thinking about like how to critically think, how else can we help young people to question or challenge what AI tells them? And particularly if they're feeling isolated or vulnerable or unsure, what additional ways might we be able to support young people in this, in using this tool more effectively?
That's, I think it starts with giving them a seat at the table. And this is another thing that I've kind of noticed. Living in southern Italy, there's the culture is much more like traditional. I always say we're like 20 years back in time. So also people in India have said the same thing, in Africa, that parents are much more authoritarian in the sense that they tell the child, and it's less so like in the north. But the thing is that with AI, with kids using AI, then that approach isn't going to work, because we can't always know. We won't know, right? And they'll know much more than we. So as a parent, I know that I can guide my daughter in a certain direction, but I can't set the rules for her. We have to do it together. So I think that acknowledging that they are much more experienced in these tools, acknowledging that they know a lot about it already, but also convincing them that there's a lot that they don't know about the world, right? Like you know a lot about that tool, but I know a lot about the world, and so just being on that road together, I think, would be a big help, right? Just acknowledging what they have and still convincing them, instead of like, I'm going to keep you safe. It's like, I'm going to help you keep yourself safe. I think that's the best like way we can help them, and regards the ones that are vulnerable and are turning to AI chatbots, for example, acknowledge that it's not about them, it's about the society. It's actually about the something that is missing, right? As you say, mental health is a good example. Like, and I know about the UK, just what I read on BBC, and I've read that a lot of kinds that there's simply a shortage of mental health support, especially for young people. There's an explosion in the need, but so what are you going to do? Like if you need mental health support and there's no mental health support, then you will turn to an AI chatbot. Right. And so acknowledge to the young person, I realize that this is a gap in society that has brought you to this place, but at the same time, please be aware that what you're doing is very, very risky. So I think that this could be just a help in helping them feel heard, because often being heard is really enough to give people strength to help themselves much more.
That's a really helpful answer, and certainly I'm sure my listeners or our listeners would really have really appreciated your insight into that. It brings me on to my final question. If you could launch a campaign around AI and youth relationships, what's the core message you'd want every young person to hear?
I think the core message would really be that you need to know yourself before you engage with AI. Right? I've thought about this a lot, really a lot. I mean, how do we get young people to understand why it's important to be careful? And I think that just to help them understand that there's just huge risk that they will lose their independence. People say social media, that you turn to social media because you want independence from your family, but then you actually become dependent on the social media. So if this would be my message for young people, please understand that this is such a powerful tool, and it's going to know you so well that you have to protect your I'm not finding the right word, like mental independence. So the better you know yourself, the better you care about that side, then you will much likely, it will actually benefit you. AI can be extremely beneficial, extremely, but with the right relationship with it.
Yeah. That's so good. That's really lots of very wise insight into that final thing. So, I mean, that was my final question. So it brings us up to sort of the roundup. So, as in sort of good relationships with the AI tradition, I ask about warm fuzzies versus the ick. And so for warm fuzzies, what has been a powerful lesson that you have been given as a gift in a relationship, or in a connection that you've made?
The biggest gift actually is, from having lived in multiple countries and having relationships with people with multiple languages. The biggest gift is the understanding that you often speak past each other. This is probably, I can probably give the same answer for ick, but being given the gift of people who really understand that maybe it's a language issue, like especially in German, like that. I was in a relationship with an Austrian, and he was from a part of Austria where in his region, the word for relaxing at home, when you're just, I'm having a well-deserved relax, was actually the German word for lazy.
Interesting.
And he would come to me, and I would be working hard all weekend. He would say, "Oh, you're lazy today," and we would have a huge argument. And I'm like, "Once I'm lazy today," and then it took like 5 years to figure out. Like 5 years we were arguing about this, and understood. No, that's dialect for just sitting at home relaxing. And so this was like, that's really important. And since then, I understand that sometimes we actually are talking about the same thing, and it's just like some kind of misunderstanding your language, and that's a warm fuzzy, right? It kind of like it connects me to people that understanding that okay, we're probably talking about the same thing, but we're just saying it in ways that make it seem. So it helps me build relationships, and I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah, that's good. That's that, to have that example being like a double header, so to speak, the ick and the warm fuzzy, the sort of misinterpretation, but also the fact that actually there's the benefit. So that's good. And then how has and so thinking about it in relation to AI, how does that work out in relationships with AI that you've encountered?
That's an interesting one, because with AI, I am fascinated by it, but knowing, I'm very aware of all these things that I just told you. So when I communicate with it, and I use AI chatbots every day. It's important. I work by myself. I don't live by myself, but I work by myself. So I'm by myself a lot. So I need to have someone on the other side to give me opinions. But when I approach AI, I naturally always know that this thing thinks in a way that I don't understand. Yeah, because it seems to be a human, but it isn't. It seems to be human-like,
Yeah.
but it isn't actually human-like. So I'm able to keep like a safe, kind of a safe distance, because I'm always telling myself, like, what is it thinking? I know it's not, thinking. What is it? What's driving its answers? Yeah. So that's how it helps me. It helps me to keep, I think, a healthy relationship with these AI chatbots, because I just keep these lessons in mind, that I know that I'm going to think that it is a certain way, but it probably is different. So that's how that's connected.
Yeah, that's good. Well, thank you so much. And before we end the show, how can people get in touch with you? Have you got what your socials, and then have you got any specific events or things coming up that you would like to share with everybody?
Yes, I'm only on LinkedIn, because I'm not good with social media. So you can find me, Angeline Corvaglia, on LinkedIn. And there I have also pages for SHIELD. It's called SHIELD Global Online Safety Conference is the page. And then this Data Girl in France, you can find it as well there. And I actually have an event coming up with SHIELD. SHIELD has an event on the 11th of June where we're going to have a lot of experts, and they're going to be talking about the things that I just talked about, and also coping mechanisms about how to use AI relationship chatbots and stay safe, because as I said, it's not realistic to and this will be on the 11th of June. This will be in the afternoon European time, so like morning American time, and anyone who wants to get up in the middle of the night in Australia. But it will be recorded and available on YouTube after that. So that one I'm really excited about.
Oh, brilliant. That's going to be a very, very interesting and sort of very enriching conference as well. Anyway, thank you so much, Angeline. That's just so great to have this conversation with you, and that ends today's episode with relationships with AI. Please subscribe and follow us on all platforms on with AI FM. Once again, Angeline, it's a pleasure having you on, and look forward to seeing what you get up to in this space. Okay, great. Thanks so much. Take care.
Thank you for having me.